Okay, let's get started. Dr. Haley Gemara, we're actually at the mission at the bottom of Ayin Kessel and Bays. We're starting to close in on the end of the parak and on the end of the Masechta. I think Shlomi Feintek's pushing us to go, so I guess we should go. The problem is he sent out a link and the link didn't work. So did you try his link? Or it didn't work.
It worked yesterday.
It works, so maybe from my phone it doesn't work. Okay, so let's see what the Halakha Mishnah says. Yesterday we learned a little bit about the nemonos of a father. The Rebbe Yehuda holds he's nemon even on the yuchsin of his child, while the Tanakama said he's only nemon to say that my child is a bechor lagabi taking pishnayim, and it really is only relevant because it really has a mikui. He doesn't need a special nemonos. He really has a mikui. He can give it to the child. He can give the pishnayim to the child. It's really only relevant for the nechasim that he would get later on while he was a goysis, where he wasn't in the position to give it away. So for those in the odd chance that while he's a goysis, there's nechasim that come to him that he can't give away, his nemonis is that the bechor will get pishnayim of those nechasim as well. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Misha nasan rishus l'shluchay l'kadishes bitay. Someone was mamana shliach to be mekadish's daughter. And then and then he went and also was mekabel kedushin for her. Im shaloi kadmu, if his kedushin was first, kidushav kedushin, his kedushin will be a good kedushin, and his being mekabel kedushin from this person is a bittul hashlichos of the shliach that he made. Im shal shluchay kadmu. But if a shliach had already made the kedushin before he had a chance to make the kedushin, then kidushav kedushin. So the kedushin that the shliach was mekabel, that would be the good kedushin. And if we don't know who was mekabel first, we don't have clear timing. So then shneim noistim get misofik. They're both married. She has to get a get from both of these men. V'imratzu. But if they wanted, echad noisim get v'echad kodesh. They can make a decision that one person will give her a get, and the other person will be kodesh. They can, if she agrees and they agree, they can do anything they want because she would not be usher on the other one once she gets a get. And this same halacha applies if the woman herself did this. And the halacha v'kichas atzma. So we're talking now an adult girl who could be mekabel her own kedushin, and she made a shliach. Im shalach kadmu kiddusha kedushin, im shlucha kadmu kiddusha kedushin, im einem yoidim shneim noisen laget, im ratzu echad noisen laget v'echad kodesh. So the first question that jumps out at you is, we have two cases that are virtually identical. The only difference is who is representing the tzadakala. Is she representing herself, like in the Seifa, or is her father representing her? Why does the Mishnah need to repeat both these cases? Utzricha yashmiyin gabadidei. If we only had the first case of our Mishnah, where it was the father who was mamana shliach, and it was the father who was mekabel kedushin, mishum the gavra kim le b'yuchsin. That's because a man is more of a buck. He's more into yichus, and as Rashi says, even though he made a shliach, the father, when the father found a boy who was miyucheses for his daughter, kitchaloi, he right away was mekadosh his daughter to that boy who he was able to confirm was a miyucheses. And let's not forget, you have to check 4 generations to be sure. If it's a Yisrael, you got to check even the next generation. So kitchaloi ubita las shliach, and with that he was mevatel the shliach. Aval itza, but a girl, this woman who was being mekabel kedushin for herself, the lekim lavayuchsin. She's not so makbid on yichus herself because she doesn't know. It's harder for her to understand it and to sort it out. So she's relying much more heavily on her shliach. She really didn't mean to make her own kedushin. She really wanted the kedushin that her shliach would make. She never relied on her kedushin. The savra dolma shliach mashkas miyuchas mizeh. When she was mekabel kedushin, she didn't even mean it, because really she wants the boy selected by her shliach who will do a better job of screening the yichus of a potential mate. Maybe her Kiddushin would not be good Kiddushin no matter what, even if it was first. And if we only knew the second case, where when she is Makabal Kiddushin first, her Kiddushin is Chal, because a woman is more makbid on things when she's getting married. We have the term Daiku Mitzvah when a woman, her husband goes missing. Before she would marry another husband, she would look into it to make sure, regardless of any Adim that are there, she would independently make sure that her husband's dead. So she looks into things more. She's analytical. But maybe the father, when he's marrying his daughter off, sure, he's going to need a meyuchas, but he doesn't need such a high level of meyuchas. The woman herself, she wants the best of the best for herself. The father is more realistic and he'll settle for something that meets his minimum guideline. So therefore, and therefore, the father did not have in mind to be mevatel the shlichus of the shliach. And even though the shliach might pick a boy who's less meyuchas than the boy that the father here found, maybe he still wants to stick to the shliach. So why, if you want to rely on the shliach and you feel that he'll get a boy who's good enough, so then why b'chalal were you makabel kedushin yourself? Just in case he doesn't find. But if the shliach finds, then my kedushin that I'm being makabel here should be bottled. I'm going to rely on the shliach. I'm just afraid if he can't find anybody, so as a backup, I'm going to set this guy up.
Is it
so therefore?
Once you make a shliach, doesn't that, like, didn't we say?
1 second, Victor. So therefore, on either tzad, there's a chiddush that the kedushin that the father was makabel, or the kedushin that she was makabel, is valid, and she does mean to be mevatel shliach. I'm sorry about that.
Maybe I'm mixing things up, but didn't we say by Kiddushin, you can't be mevatel shliach shalom b'fanav? Like, isn't the ideal once you set a shliach in action, unless you tell them that their shlichus is mevatel, they're going, they're your agent. So why would there really be a havamina here that whoever gets there first should be the one that Kiddushin should
If I remember correctly, you can always be mevatel shliach shalom b'fanav. However, by gerushin, there's a takana that you should not, and the reason why you should not is because if you're mevatel shliach shalom b'fanav and he's not aware of it, he'll still give your wife the get, and she'll still go get married, and really, the get wasn't valid because you were mevatel. So by get, there's a halacha that the rabbanon, if someone gives a get, if someone is mevatel his shliach that he sent to give a get, even though midaraisa it's a good bittul and the get is not a get, the rabbanon will be mafkiya his kedushin because they want to avoid a peril. But everybody holds that you could technically be mevatel shliach shaloi b'fanav. And the question is his act of being makabel kedushin a bittul shlichus? Because let's see the Gemara. Thank you. Itmar kitcha avia b'derech. What happens if the father was traveling, so he wasn't in contact with his daughter, and he was a makabel kedushin for her when he was away, and the kitcha atzma be'ir, and she herself that very same day was makabel kedushin for herself where she was. Now, the obvious question is mimanavshech. If she's a naira, she cannot be makabel her own kedushin. Only he could. If she's a boigris, she could be makabel kedushin, and he can't. The case is arehi boigris. So what happened was when he left town, we knew she was only a naira, and when he returns to town, she's a boigris. So we don't know at the time that he was makabel kedushin for her, was she still a naira, and therefore his kedushin will be valid, or was she already a boigris, and therefore his kedushin is not valid, but the daughter's kabbalah's kedushin would be valid. That was the question. As Rashi says, but kanua, after they were both Makabel Kedushin, then there was a Badika made, Ladas im Yotza Rishus Av, to determine if she had already left the Rishus of her father, Leois Kiddushin, Umitzanu Bargis by B'yayim, and you found her on that day where they were both Makabel Kedushin, you found that she's a Bageris. But we don't know what she was precisely at the time when the father was Makabel Kedushin for her. That is the question. Rav Amar, Harehi Bageris Lefaneni. Rav says she's a Bageris now. We're going to assume she was a Bageris the whole time, and therefore the father's Kedushin has zero validity. The Kedushin that she was Makabel for herself, that is the man that she's married to, Bivadayis. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel is more Machmer. Chayshinon lekidushay shneim. We still need to be concerned, as Rashi says, Shema kishakit ha'av, maybe earlier in the day, when the father was Makabel Kedushin for her, Naira Haisa, he was still a Naira, and therefore the Kadmu Kedushav, and his Kedushin was Chal before hers, and therefore hers could not be Chal because she was an Ish at the time. Let's drill down to understand exactly what the circumstances of this case is. We know there's a rule that once a woman becomes a Naira, it takes 6 months, she's a Naira for 6 months, and then after 6 months she becomes a Baigris. So if it's within the 6 months, then she's a Naira. But her name is Rav. Harei Baigris Lefanenu. Hashtu the Bagra. Would Rav say that if it was within 6 months, we assume that she was a Baigris? We don't assume that she was a Baigris if she's still within the 6 months of Nairis. Rather, Hashtu the Bagra. Let's say that she became a Baigris a moment before we were Baidik her. Because we have to assume up until now that she was not a Baigris because the 6 months had not yet elapsed since she became a Naira. If you're going to say, speaking that the story happened after the 6 months, well, then Bahal name is Shmuel Chashinan Lekidushay Shneyan. Why would Shmuel be chashid at all for the father's kedushin? She was a Baigris. V'amar Shmuel ein beinayis lebagris ela shisha chadashim bilvad. So let's assume she was a Baigris the whole time, and the father's kedushin is no validity. So what is the machlokes over here? So tomorrow leitricha the kaddish bahu yoima the maslam shisha. This story happened on the day where the 6 months lapsed. So sometime during that day, we know there's going to be a transition. Therefore, there's no chazaka on her at all, because today is the day that she's going to be transitioning from Naira to Baigris. Rav Amar Harei Baigris Lefanenu. We can go basar what we find now. Midahash to Baigris, the Tzafar Nami Baigris. We will say that since we find her at the end of the day to be a Baigris, we will say that she already became a Baigris first thing in the morning, and therefore her father's Kedushin has no validity. It's only her Kedushin that we need to be concerned with. Shmuel Amar, Hashtahu, the Icy Simonim. Maybe right now she brought the Simonim, but until now she was not a Baigris. The Simonim, by the way, are the two sires that come by she's a Naira, not when she's a Baigris. So we have to see what these Simonim mean. So let's see what Rashi says. If this story occurred within those 6 months, we say there's only a 6 month period of time when she's a Naira before she becomes a Bagris. Once a girl brings Simoni Nairas, which are two Cyrus. From that moment, the clock starts to tick, and 6 months later she becomes a Bagris. However, sometimes she will become a Baigris a little bit prematurely. And how do you know when that happens? Because it's not just timing. The simonim of a Baigris are the simonim nikarim bidadeh. If her breasts start to grow, that's a sign that she's already a Baigris. So if that would happen early, she in fact would be a Baigris. Talks about the shape of her breasts. But I'll call upon him. Here you have a girl who, at the end of the day, we checked, and it turned out she was a Baigris, and we don't know, was she a Baigris at the time that her father was Makabel Kedushin, yes or not? So, Frek the Gemara, if it's speaking in a case where it's before the 6 months lapped, the Ha'amarav Hare Baigris Lefanenu, Hakal Lois and Shisha Chadashim, Becheskes Nairahi, we have to assume that she's Becheskes Naira for the entire 6 months, Ad Shenakar B'Simoni Bagrusa, until we can be 100% sure to verify that she has Simoni Bagros. If she was checked in the morning, and she was found to be, I'm sorry, but Panya means in the afternoon. When you check her in the afternoon and you find that she was a Bagros, Mi Yemar, that Safra Nami Bagrisi. Who said in the morning she was a Bagros? The assumption is that she would remain a Naira until we actually see the changes herself. We don't have to the Bagra. Maybe she only became a Bageris right now. And if it's speaking after the 6 months have lapsed, so then for sure we have to assume she was a Bageris. So how could Shmuel say that we're choshed for the Kiddushin of the father? The Teretz is of Rashi, the Kaddish b'yoyim the mashmal shish. The Kiddushin was exactly on that day. Aviyah b'boiker v'hi b'erev. The father was makabel Kiddushin in the morning and her in the evening. V'yoyim hazeh he b'cheska sheti boger. And that day we know for sure she's going to become a boigers because that is the day where the 6 months have elapsed. So Rav says midhash the boigers but safranami boigers. So kol hayoyim he b'cheska shetovi. She has a chazaka that sometime today she's going to become a boigers. But Shmuel says, maybe the Simoni Bagros came after the Kiddushin of the father, and therefore we have to be choshed that the father's Kiddushin is a good Kiddushin. Choshed speaks out a very interesting thing. Why do we need a case where she was makabel Kiddushin for herself? Why can't it be a simple case? On that day, the father was makabel Kiddushin. We don't know if at that moment in time she was a Naira or a Boigris. So we have a suffix, is this Kiddushin a good Kiddushin? Why must the case be complicated that she was also Makabel Kiddushin? Was not a good child?
Good child, but maybe she would be masking to the father's Kiddushin.
It doesn't matter if she
didn't do something else.
It doesn't matter if she's masking. If the father doesn't have a koyach to be Makabel Kiddushin for her, because she's a Boigris, unless she was Mimana him as a Shliach, it wouldn't be a good Kiddushin. So Tosfos' answer is very posh. Because if she had a cheskas, if she had a cheskas pnuya, she had a cheskas that she's not married, so that chazaka would also pass in this shaila that in fact she was a boigers at the time. So we need to, and we're going to soon see, we need to eliminate any other chazakas. So we have to eliminate. There's no chazaka that she's not married because she's now an Eishes anyway. The question really is she an Eishes to the man who her father was makabel Kiddushin for her, or is she an Eishes to the man that she was makabel Kiddushin? So therefore, you cannot use her cheskas pnuya to influence this child. That's what Tosfos says.
If she's a cheskas pnuya, that means she has the previous.
So that should paskin that she was a boigris at the time. That should paskin that she was a boigris at the time, and the father's Kiddushin is not a good Kiddushin.
Why is cheskas pnuya? Cheskas pnuya tells us
that she's not married
on her previous state. What was the previous state?
In every suffix you have a chazaka, and the chazaka tells us that just like she was a pnuya yesterday, she's a pnuya now.
That means that just like she was a nara yesterday, so she stayed a nara today.
No, that we don't have such a chazaka because it's the day of the change, the day of the transition. There's no chazakas nara anymore. So, and that's what the Gemara is going to explain a little bit later as the Gemara elaborates. But the Gemara wanted to make sure that we don't have any other chazakas influencing this decision. Otherwise, you would have a cheskes pnuya. So, for the Gemara, Shmuel says that you don't go basar chazaka dahashta. Rav says she's a boigers now. I don't need to worry about anything else. Shmuel says no, you can't assume that just because she's a boigers now that she was a boigers earlier. What's the difference between the case of mikvah that's not? Mikvah shenimda. We had a mikvah and on Monday morning we measured it and it had 40 saws, it was a perfectly kosher mikvah. And the things were toiveled in it, tahiris were toiveled in it, and then Thursday afternoon they checked the mikvah again, the nimsa chaser. And the mikvah is now chaser. So we don't know since Monday morning when this mikvah lost its status of a mikvah. So the halacha is called tahiris shenasu al gaba v'lumafreya. Any tahiris that were toiveled in this mikvah since Monday, since the moment we checked last time, and we knew for sure at that time it was full, they will all be tamei. Why? Because we have a chazaka of hashta. Just like now it's mechusar, we say it will be mechusar until we checked it last. So based on that svara, here too, we checked that she was a boigris. So let's assume that she was a boigris all the way back till the last time we checked, and we knew for sure she was a naira. if you do that by mikvah, why don't you do that over here by Isha as well? Zok Shmuel shiny hasam the ikla meimar hamei tamei chaskasim. Over there's another chazaka. The thing being toivel to the mikvah had a cheskas tuma. Here, the woman does not have a cheskas pnuya because regardless, she's married. So this is what Tosha speaks out why you needed to eliminate that chazaka. By the case of mikvah, there's another factor to be mixed in here, which is that the thing that you toivel had a cheskas tuma. Ve'emer letova. Correct. The Gemara Adrabah. Maybe Hamid mikvah cheskasoi ve'emer loichaser. Maybe we should go by the chazaka of the mikvah, which was a complete mikvah. The chazaka of the mikvah has a terrible reisa. We see that the mikvah lost someone. So why don't we ask on Shmuel? She's a boigus lefanecha, so that should be a raya, just like in the case of mikvah, that you don't have to be choshes for the Kiddushin of the father. So no, because hashtu the bagra. Shmuel is going to say maybe she just became a begeris right now, but earlier in the day when the father was makabel Kiddushin, maybe she was a naira. So you could say something by mikvah. Hasam nami hashtu the chaser. Why don't you say something by mikvah? Zok the Gemara hasam tartel reusa. By mikvah you have two chesronis. A, you have the chazak of tumah of whatever you're toiveling in this mikvah, and B, is you have the fact that right now it's chaser. Hacha over here by the Kiddushin chadelarusa. You have the reisa that right now she's a boigris, but you don't have any chazaka on her saying that she should not be married. So that takes care of this kasha from mikvah. So the Gemara is going to ask on Shmuel from another case. What about the case of chametz? The Tanya. What happened if someone has a big barrel of wine that's tevel in his warehouse, and he has warehouses all over the world, and he's going to be traveling all over the world, and he's going to want to use the produce, the wine that he has in all his barrels, all over his warehouses, all over the world. The problem is they're all tevel. Now he doesn't want to be mafresh. He lives in Toronto. Well, it's not really relevant Toronto because we're talking about Truma Deraisa. So he lives in Yerushalayim and he has his barrels there in his warehouse, but he's going down to Eilat, he's going to Shem, he's going all around. He has different warehouses, and he doesn't want to be busy with Truma in all those places. Truma he wants to take care of on his home base. So what he'll do is he'll go to Shem and he'll open up a barrel of Tevel and he'll say, this entire barrel is 100 gallons. 2 gallons from my barrel in Yerushalayim should be Truma on these barrels over here, on this barrel over here. So this way he consolidates all of his truma into that one barrel that he has at home, and wherever he goes, he could be masakin the wine wherever he goes, and designate that the truma for the wine wherever he is will be back at his home base. So the Tanya. Now we do know that wine, you could be mafresh as truma for wine. Vinegar, which is wine that goes bad, you could be mafresh as truma for vinegar. But you cannot be mafresh vinegar for wine or wine for vinegar because they have the status of two different meaning. So he was baidik a chavis in Yerushalayim, and he made sure it was pure wine, and now wherever he goes, he can use that chavis at home as the truma for all the other wine that he may have everywhere else. So that he would continue being mafresh truma into that barrel. He comes home from 2 weeks of traveling, and all 2 weeks long he was drinking wine from all of his barrels all over Eretz Yisrael, on the assumption that the barrel at home was truma for it. So the halach is, and then he comes home and nimtzas chaymitz. He sees it with chaymitz. So now he's in big trouble because he doesn't know what was he mafresh when it was still wine, which means that wine is good, and what he was mafresh after it became chaymitz. He doesn't know when it became bad. Now by chaymitz, there's an interesting principle, and that is it takes 3 days for it to become chaymitz. From pure wine to pure chaymitz, it takes 3 days. So from when it starts to go bad till it's completely chaymitz, it takes 3 days. So the halach is kol gimel yomim vaday, and there's a machlokes in the Gemara how to learn this case. It either means you can assume the first 3 days after he left, it was for sure wine. I mean, kan veilach sofik. All the other wine is a sofik what its status is, meaning it's a double sofik. It's a sofik on the wine that he used elsewhere, if that is still tevel, and it's a suffix if this wine is still truma. Because if this wine is truma, so then it's masukan. But if this wine is not truma, then it's tevel. You have to be mafresh minei away on it. So that he has to deal with everything. That's one shot. The other shot is Kol Gil Mil Yomim. The last 3 days since he left, since he came back, the last 3 days before he came back, there you can assume for sure it was Vadai Chaymetz. And anything before that is a soap. So the question is, are the last 2 days Vadai Chaymetz, or are the first 3 days Vadai wine?
Why did you say last 2 days?
Because it takes 3 days for it to turn Chaymetz. When he checked it, it was pure Chaymetz. So that means it must have already started to go bad 3 days ago.
It's not good even if it's not.
Yeah, once it starts to go bad, it already would not be able to be used as truma. So that is my focus. That's why it's not clear. It just says Kol Gimel Yom Vadi. It doesn't say which 3 days. So there's a machlokes if it's the first 3 days or the next 3 days. Mikan veilach sof. For the Gemara, before we get to Shmuel, uraminin chavish hamikvah. Why is it Maishna the Hacha Vadai? Why by the case of mikvah we say all the tahiris are Vadai Tamei? Right? We don't know when the mikvah went chaser. We say we look at it like it went chaser the moment he checked it last. Vadai Tamei. Why is it only a suffix? No, during the 3 days it's not a suffix. Right? It says the first 3 days it was Vadai good, or the last 3 days was Vadai bad. In the middle it's a suffix. Why in the middle is it a suffix? Why don't we say, by mikvah we say, we look at it like as soon as I checked it last, it was chaser and it has the status of now. So we apply the status of what we found now to as early as possible. By wine we don't.
Saying that it started right away.
And then, but after the 3 days, it's a suffix. So the first 3 days, we say the truma was a good truma. From after 3 days since I left until now, it's a suffix. Why isn't it a suffix? Why was it after 3 days until now? It should be considered vadai chaymetz. Just like the mikvah, once we don't have the chazak anymore, we say it changed as early as possible. So my not a suffix. In fact, it's actually a machlokes tanoim. It's a machlokes tanoim if that time in the middle is a suffix or if that time in the middle is a vadai. Man Tana Chavetz, who's the Tana of Chavetz, who says that it's a status of a suffix? Rabbi Shimoni. They got a mikvah nami sveika mashve. Even in the case of mikvah, Rabbi Shimon also holds that entire period of time since you checked it, it's not vadai tamei, it's suffix tamei. The Tanya called the highest shenaso agabav lumafreya bein b'rshus hayochid bein b'rshus harabim tameyos. That's what the Tanakama holds. But Rabbi Shimon Omer b'rshus harabim tahiros because suffix tamei b'rshus harabim sveika tahar b'rshus hayochid toilet. It's a suffix. Avol Rabbanon tevel lumafreya. But according to Rabbanon, in the case of the wine, it would be tevel all the way back till day 1 or day 3, depending on how you learn. So this is shver on Shmuel, because Shmuel says that you don't assume that the status changed. It's a suffix, and therefore the father's Kiddushin is also something you need to be choishes for. Zok the Gemara, shiny hosam. It's going to be the same answer as we said a moment ago. You have a cheskes tevel. Which tells us that it was not masukan, but this girl doesn't have a cheskas penuya because regardless she's considered married now. The question is merely to who? Ad Rabba, maybe hamidayna cheskasai ve'emer lo hichmitz. We see its status has changed to the reisa in that chazaka. Hakanami harei he v'geres lefanenu. We verify that now she is a v'geres, but we can say hashtu the bagra. Well, by one you can say as well. Nami hashta hu the achmitz. So the Gemara has some tatla rusa. There you say have the cheskes tevel on the produce, and you also have the chazaka the hashta that the wine is chaymitz. Hach in the case of the woman, tatla rusa the ika. You don't have her cheskes pnuya. All you have is the fact that right now she's a boikus. So this is an exact repeat of the kasha that the Gemara had from mikvah. Let's suggest that this machlokes Rav and Shmuel, where Rav says I can rely on the chazaka the hashta completely, and Shmuel says no. I need to be concerned that maybe it changed only recently, and during the unknown time we have to treat it like a suffix. Let's say that's totally the machlokes tonight. What happened? The halacha is if a shchivmara says someone's about to die, and he says, "I'm giving all my nechasim to plane," and then what happens is he gets better. The halacha is that matan is bottle because it's clear that he only gave away his nechasim because he thought he would not need them anymore. However, what if a buri, someone who was perfectly healthy, gave away all his nechasim? He can't change his mind because he wasn't giving it away because he didn't need him anymore. He was still alive and healthy. So the halach is what happens if someone gave away all his nechasim, he didn't leave anything for himself. And what happened is then he changes his mind. And he claims, I was a shchiv merah when I gave you this matana, and therefore now that I'm healthy, I get to keep it. And they say, what are you talking about? You were a bari when you gave us this matana. So it doesn't matter that you're walking around now. You were a bari, and the matana is a good matana. So the question is, who do we believe? Mi moitzi miyat mi. Who do we believe? Zokt the Gemara, zokt the Brisa. Who moitzi miyadam? Even if they had already seized the nechasim, he could take it away from them. V'loi raya, even if he doesn't prove that he was a shchiv merah, we automatically believe him that he was a shchiv merah at the time. His matana is null and void, and he could take back the nechasim from them if they had already seized them. But the hain ein moitzin miyadam v'loi raya. But if he has the nechasim, they can't take them away from him without a raya. And of course, it's pashut. If he could take it away from them without a raya, they surely cannot take it away from him. Divi Rabbi Yaakov, this is the shita of Rabbi Yaakov. So Rashi says, "Who might me adam im amdu v'chziku b'nechasim." If they seize the nechasim, he could take them back. He doesn't have to prove that at the time that he gave the matana, he was a shchiv merah. Even though we see now he's perfectly healthy, so here's where you see you go like Rav. Rabbi Yaakov seems to go like Rav because I'm sorry, Rabbi Yaakov holds like Shmuel. Rav would hold if he's buried now, she's a biker now. Let's assume she was a biker the whole time. Rabbi Yaakov says no, just because he's healthy now, you don't assume he was healthy the whole time. Maybe earlier when he gave the matan, he was a shchiv merah. So Rabbi Yaakov seems to say like Shmuel. Rav Nosson Omer in bari hu alav lahaviraya shahaya shchiv merah. If he's a bari right now, we will assume that he was a bari when he gave the matana. And if he's a shchiv merah now, aleim lahaviraya shabari hay. So it's clear that Reb Nosson seems to say like Rav, and Rabbi Yaakov seems to say like Shmuel. Name a Rav, Damak Reb Nosson, the Shmuel, Damak Rav, Reb Yaakov. Amalach Rav, Zok Rav, no, another Amr Yafiluk Reb Yaakov. Even though I held by boigris, we assume that she was a boigris, and the Kiddushin of the father is not a Kiddushin, nevertheless, I would still agree with Reb Yaakov that the assumption is that the matan is bottled. Why? Ad kan loikom Reb Yaakov hotzam the ikalamei Muhammad mamnachas kosei. By Rabbi Yaakov's case, there is another chazakah that comes into play. Before this whole confusion started, surely all of these nechasim belong to the gifter, to the giver. So that overarching chazakah will say that by default it goes back to the noisei. Aval hacha, but here, by the case of the girl who became a biker that day, you can't say Hamid Gubal Chaskosai in a day where we know that there's going to be transition. We know she's transitioning today. There's no chazakah there.
You have a star.
Sorry?
You have a star here. The star breaks that chazakah from Hamid.
So the Gemara disagrees with you. The Gemara says it doesn't. So let's talk about that later. We have a block to finish. Shmuel Amar, another Amri, Afil Reb Nosson. Shmuel says, even though I have my shash by a boigris that maybe she was a naira earlier, I could still agree with Reb Nosson that we assume he's a bari if he's a bari now, or we assume he's a shchiv merah, he's a shchiv merah now. I can like Reb Nosson Hasam the chul alma v'cheskas briim kaini. Most people have a status that they're healthy. Mandika mafik nafshei mechazaka. If you want to say that you were not a bari, you were a shchiv merah. He would have to bring a raya. Here she's not pulling herself out of a chazaka. We know she's going to be changing. So let's see Rashi. Mi ikal meimar hamid aguf al chaskosoi v'sahavinaira yoim the mishlam shish ein ba loy cheskes nairis v'loy cheskes bagris. Shayoim yoim this lishtanos. Today is the day she's going to change. She has no chazaka to either side. If we know he's healthy now, could he pull himself out of that chazaka? Claimer. I'm sorry, this is claimer. When we're misoping that she's a naira, we're not pulling her out of any chazaka because she could be either way.
most healthy people don't give away their whole tamei. So this shows that some people.
So that's a new svara you're asking. That's fine, but the Gemara doesn't. The Gemara does not ask that.
Previous instituting have a
I hear.
Most people don't do this.
So
This itself shows that.
I hear your svara. So you have a question. Why isn't that right? It's a good trial. That's a good trial when we learned that sugya. But Lamaisa, the facts are the Gemara is not relying. So Zokt Shmuel, even though normally I will assume that there was no chazaka here, but the Cheskes Bari we have. That's a stronger chazaka, and therefore even I would agree over there that we could rely on it. Or rather, even Rab Nosson would agree over here in the case of Boigris that you don't rely on any chazaka. Okay, so the Gemara diffused that situation. So the Gemara said, name a counter tonight. So maybe Rab and Shmuel agree with a different set of tonight. And guess what? We're going to our Mishnah. Now we know why it's relevant to our Mishnah. Name a counter tonight. Kid Shavi B'derech, or actually not our Mishnah, it's the Gemara that we started with. Kid Shavi B'derech, the father was, it's a Bryce, that's right. It's exactly the Bryce is discussing exactly the case that Rav and Shmuel are arguing about. So there's really no room to say otherwise. Maybe. Kitcha Avi B'derech, the Kitcha Atzma Be'ir, B'arei U'Baigris, Tani Chad Arei U'Baigris L'Fanenu, which is Rav Shita, but Tani Idach Hashinu L'Kedush Shneim, which is Shmuel Shita. My love, Chad Kirav, Chad Kishmuel. It's pretty much word for word what Rav said, and word for word what Shmuel said. Zok Marloi, you still don't have a raya. Maybe Idi v'Idi Kishmuel. Maybe Shmuel will agree with both options. With the price that it says that Chashinu L'Kedush Shneim, which is what he says. But maybe he could also agree with Harei Burgers Lefnei. Why? Kan b'machshasai. You know where he'll agree that Harei Burgers Lefnei? That's if she says, Tati, I became a burgers earlier. I know myself. So Kirashi, b'machshasai, how did Tani Harei Burgers Lefnei? The machshasai lavia loimer kfar bagarti me'etma. She'll tell her father, I was a burgers ready. Toshba says Rashi's making a mistake. It can't be me'etma because today is the day that she changes. And we said we checked her in the morning. It means she checked herself. I became a bikeress earlier today. By the time you did the Kiddushin, I know I had already been a bikeress. There, Shmuel would agree to Rav that you're not choshesh for his Kiddushin. When he's not makish, when she's not makish, and she herself doesn't know, that's when Shmuel says you're choshesh for both Kiddushin. So for the Gemara, once you're saying that you can have these two shittas, which seem to be exactly the machlekes Rav and Shmuel, and now we're kvetching that it's not the machlekes Rav and Shmuel, rather one speaking with makoshay and one speaking shloim makoshay, maybe I'm a roy nami like pligi. Maybe Rav and Shmuel don't argue just because they said two different things. Maybe Rav said this halacha that you assume that she's married to the second person, to the person who should become a Kiddushin is when she herself claims, I know I became a bikeress. And Shmuel said Yechosh is speaking in the case kishein machashos. So maybe there's b'chalal no machlokes Rav and Shmuel, just like your Shrank says no machlokes to the two Brises. So like more of a Tizbra, you can't say that. Why? Because Rabbi Yosef Bereit Rabbi Nasha Midavil, Rabbi Yosef patkind avoid of the kavos of the Rav. He patkind like Rav to be mekel to say that we're not choshesh to the Kiddushin of the father. The ikbet Shmuel got very upset with him. The Amar and he said, well, look at that. You think you're better than everybody else. Everybody else got a lower measure of chachma and wouldn't dare be machriya lakula like Rav. But this Kiddushin of Yosef, he's better than us all. He's smarter than us all. He got a bigger measure of chachma, and he knows that he can be making like Rav. If there's no machlekes Rav and Shmuel, am I come up with? Why is Shmuel getting so upset? Right? Shmuel would also agree. You could be mekel.
Maybe because you know the story.
Zaktimar Dilma he ovid ilda b'makashasai. Maybe that was the case there. Maybe that was the case. Why is he angry? Amar le Marzutra l'Ravashi. So Marzutra told Ravashi, Hachi Amar Abemar. Okay, so that's it. So we don't have a raya from there because maybe that's speaking b'makash. So Amar le Marzutra l'Ravashi. Hachi Amar Abemar. What do we do? Allah l'maisa. Hilchazuk of Asay de Shmuel. We're machmer like Shmuel. Ravashi Amar, Hilchazuk Avasei the Rav. We're making like Rav. The Hilchazuk Avasei the Rav, we passing like Rav. For Ektoishvis, we always know but the different Isser Veheter, we passing like Rav, Kineged Shmuel. We only passing like Shmuel in Dinei Mominis. So Ektoishvis, the reason why the Gemara had to speak it out here is because clearly there's controversy over here. So the Gemara wanted to come up with a clear maskana. Okay, we got to rush. We got to rush. We only have 3 minutes left, and we have to finish. A man and his wife left on a long trip. Uba, and he comes back a couple of years later. Who the Ishta Ubano, and he has now a whole family with him. The Amor, and he said, Isha Shayata Imi Limdin Sayam Harayuzu. Remember that woman who I was married to, who I was boydek 4 generations? Well, this is the same woman. The Elubanel, and these children are her children. So the Allah is Ein Tzarech Lavi Raya, Loyal Isha V'Loy Alabon. He doesn't have to bring a raya that the Isha is a Kshera, because he already did that when he first married her. And the Banim, the Gemara is going to tell us, we're speaking Banim Ketanim that are Kruchim Leitalima, little children that are grabbing onto their mother's skirts. It's clear that she is their mother. If it's clear that she is their mother and she's already proven to be a Miyucheses, the children are assumed to be Miyucheses as well. What if he comes back, and he only has children and he doesn't have a wife with him? Mesa ve'elu baneha. So now he doesn't have any proof that these children are really her children, because we don't have the siman that they're kruchin, that they're attached to her. So the Allah is maybe raya alabonim. He has to bring a raya that these children are the children of that wife who was deceased. But the raya al isha, because he had already proven that she's miyucheses. What if he says Isha nasasi bebedin sayam? He comes back with a woman, and he said, "This woman is not the woman I left with. This is a new woman that I married." Harehizu ve'elu banel. So then maybe raya al isha. He has to bring a raya that this woman is a kshera, because he never proved that she was a miyucheses. But the ain't tzarich lahavi raya al banim, because once again we see that the banim are kruchim on her. What about meisa ve'elu banel? So now he comes back and says, "I have children from a wife that I married there, and she's not here with me now." So then tzarich lahavi raya al isha al banim. Then you need to bring a raya that the isha was kshera, and that these are her children. Amar Rabba Barhuna. Rabbi Barhuna said, this only works if the children are holding on to her, which will show that they are her children. If someone said, I married a woman in Medina Sayyam, maybe raya alo isha. He has to bring a raya on the isha, but it's only the banim ketadim that he doesn't have to bring a raya, because the fact that they're holding on to her shows that they are her children. But it may be raya like a doilam. If there's adult children who you can't tell that they are her children, for those children, he would have to bring a raya. This only works if there's only one woman. But if there's 2 women involved, maybe raya ala isha v'alabanim ala gdoilim v'alaktanim. Zot Rashi v'isha achas sha'amar isha achas nasasi. I married 1 woman. Avol shtei noshim hayu. But if he said I had 2 wives, umeisa ha'achas, 1 died, so now he comes back with 1 wife, but he comes back with 1 wife, but he had been married to another wife, and he's saying, achas, the elu boneh shalzu, and these are the children of the wife who survived, these are the children of the wife that I brought back with me. There, maybe raya aleha miyucheses. He has to bring a raya that this new wife that he has here with him is miyucheses, and balabadim shem boneh, alakdoyin balaktanim, ba'afilu kuchen acharel. You know why? Because it's no longer a raya that these children are her children, even though they're hanging on to her. She adopted them. So therefore, the Shema Baneh shall chavet hayu v'gedlason. So the fact that they're holding on to her doesn't prove that they're actually her children. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll be back tomorrow. Okay, so Rabbi, what were you asking? So you asked me, first of all, you're asking me, there's a star. But the star doesn't say if it was a matna shchiv mirah or if it was a matna shvari.
The star shows that you can't put this on the previous owner, because the previous owner writes, I gave it to you.
But the question is that a good matana? If it's a matna shchibara, then it doesn't mean anything.
So, verstehe ich meine zweite Sache. Why is a matna shchibara not when he gives away a matna?
Because it's an umdana that he would not have given it away if he knew he was going to live.
No, why?
Because he needs it.
Right. So, this shows if someone comes and he has a shtar that person gave away his whole from. So this shows this every normal person doesn't do it.
Well, no, there's a reason why a bari would give everything away. There's reasons why a bari would want to give everything away.
So Tome, but it's not the regular. That's for sure. Right?
It's not a regular for a shchibara to give everything away either. He would leave it for his children. He would do it for his children. What?
Children.
So Stama was giving everything away. I never heard of anybody who did that ever.
I
know Mendel Kaplan got it. You know the story of Mendel Kaplan. You don't know the story of Mendel Kaplan? So let me turn this off.